I used to find the experience of trying to capture photos for social media to be such an incredible struggle. And I remember jumping on Instagram, looking at all of my favorite florists and wondering, what is it that I'm missing? How did they make it look so easy? And what is it that they know that I don't? And if you're a floral designer who struggles to take photos of your own work, if you want to take photos for your own portfolio, or you want to make your content production process way easier for social media, I want to share with you the 12 best lessons that I've learned that help me not suck taking pictures, taking photos, so that I could start to build my own portfolio. And if you're anything like me and you're wondering what is it that the famous florists know that I didn't know, or you're feeling incredibly frustrated because you keep trying and you're taking photos and you're practicing and you're putting in the effort, but you're just not loving the result, then this is the video for you. And back in 2018, I was a few years into running my own business, and I knew I needed to find a better way to take photos of my work, build my portfolio, so that I could create a better website, so that I could show up more consistently on social media. But I constantly felt let down. I was so frustrated in my own true DIY trial and error in terms of trying to take photos of my own work. And in many cases, I was let down once I finally received the photos from some of my clients. And I inevitably would wait for months in many cases to get photos from weddings and events that we did, and then I'd look at the photos and be like, this isn't really showcasing the work in the best light possible. So I kind of felt like I was wasting so much time sitting around waiting for the professional photos to come back from the weddings, but I was also sitting in a pool of frustration because I was trying to figure out how to take better pictures of my own work. And I was like, okay, there has to be a better way. I have to figure this out. So I then set on a path, and I spent a full year deconstructing, trial and error, figuring it out one step at a time. And I thought, hey, I can't be the only floral designer on the planet that's looking at this going like, how do all the cute, amazing girls on Instagram do it? What is it that they know that you and I don't know? And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to share the 12 things that have been super helpful for me. And I want you to take any pieces of these. I mean, you could take all 12, honestly, take anything that you want in this video, put it into practice and apply it for yourself, because it's been so helpful that I now have these 12 tools that I can rely on. But seriously, just honestly, take everything that I talk about in this video, make it your own, put it into practice for yourself, share it with all of your flower friends so that you can start to enjoy the process of capturing content, taking pictures of your own work, start to build your own portfolio, and you can be way more intentional with how you go about making it happen. So the first thing to know is that designing flowers and taking pictures are two completely different things. And I know that might sound like the dumbest thing that you've ever watched in a YouTube video, but things really started to click for me when I was talking to a professional photographer, and she said, well, of course it's a completely different thing, because when you're designing flowers in a bouquet or in an arrangement, or you're doing an installation, you've got all three dimensions to work with. When you're taking a photo, you remove the third dimension, so everything gets flattened. So that's why when you're creating a design, when you're creating a bouquet and it looks great to the human eye, but you take a picture of it and you're like, why does it look so flat? Simply because the act and the art of photography removes the third dimension. So if you're feeling incredibly frustrated and you're like, why is it that I can design beautiful things, but I can't take a picture of it? That is the science. That is the method behind the extreme frustration. So I do find it really helpful, and I'll talk a little bit about this in a minute, but I did find it, and I do find it really helpful to intentionally practice creating designs for the camera. You'll actually be able to look through the photos that you take when you start practicing designing for the camera versus designing for the human eye. And in many cases, you might love the impact of what it looks like on camera, but then look back at the actual design and be like, wow, these things are truly so spaced apart. There's so much depth. There's so much more exaggeration. And that's exactly what's required when you're thinking about designing flowers, designing a bouquet, designing an arrangement for the camera. So rule number one, principle number one, just remember that third dimension is removed, and that's why your images are going to look so flat. So then number two, this one I want you to jump on your computer and I want you to open up Pinterest, because I want you to spend some intentional time really thinking about the kinds of photos and the kinds of images that you want to have in your own portfolio. One of the most beautiful things that we have access to is the internet. And thank heavens for all those amazing floral designers who have gone out of their way, and all those photographers who have uploaded their images to Pinterest and who share their work on Instagram, because then you and I can use it as inspiration. So exactly like if we were at art school and we would go to some fancy gallery, we would sit there, we would deconstruct, we would analyze, and we would truly study the work of the masters. We get to do exactly the same thing as floral designers. So if there are designers and florists whose work you absolutely love and they have their work shared on Pinterest, go in there, deconstruct it, study it. Ask yourself, what is it that I love about this image? Is it the composition? Is it the background? Is it what she's wearing? Is it the flowers? Is it the pose? Is it the fact that they're not looking at the camera? Is it the fact that she is looking at the camera? Like, whatever it is about the photo that you love, I love this creative exercise of sitting down and taking time and deconstructing your favorite artist's work. So the same thing applies if we were at art school as we are in floristry. We get to look at the work that inspires us, and we get to look at the photographs of the work that inspires us and figure out what we love about it, and then we can get to work learning how to make that happen for ourselves. So I used to spend so much time, and I'd get so frustrated because I would assume that just picking up my phone and taking a couple of happy snaps was all that was required. Until I started to realize, well, wait a minute, that's not working. Clearly not getting me any closer to where I want to be. So when I started to realize that we can just go through a very linear creative process when we're thinking about and planning out our photos and our images, then before you even pick up your camera or your phone, just literally jump on Pinterest, jump on Instagram, jump on Google, like whatever it is that you want to use as your research tool. The fact that we have all of that at our fingertips means that we can sit on the sofa and we can actually study our favorite designers, study our favorite photos, and then we can get to work learning how to make that happen, using that content as inspiration and putting our own spin on it. And I always think of this idea, if we have a reference photo or a piece of inspiration that we can pull from, it's so much easier for you and I to then deconstruct it, pull it apart, figure out the pieces that we want to create our own version of it, instead of just flailing around and hoping that it'll all sort itself out. Number 3, when it comes to the actual composition, one thing that I found really helpful is to focus on the backdrop. Flowers, by their very nature, are intricate, delicate, complicated subject matter. It's very similar to shooting food. Unless you're shooting a single flower, which even in that case still has so much detail and so much nuance that you could capture on camera, your bouquets, your arrangements have a lot going on. It's so much easier to capture a beautiful image if your background is very, very neutral and blank and boring. So I do love having a specific wall painted and having like a go-to backdrop to make the actual content creation process so much easier. And I do have my favorite color when it comes to painting that backdrop because it's super neutral. On camera, it almost comes across as a creamy white, but it has a very warm undertone to it. But you could take this one step further. Go out there and find a tint of one of your brand colors and paint one of your walls that color. And this shortcut of having your own backdrop that you can shoot off of is also one of the reasons that I stopped taking photos of our work, or so many photos of our work, in situ at receptions or inside the venue. Because many restaurants, many bars, many places where people might be having events or weddings, there's a lot going on. There is a lot happening and there's a lot to distract the eye. Taking pictures inside of a reception space, taking pictures inside of somebody else's location is inherently going to be a little bit harder. And of course, the pros can do it, but you and I are total DIY flower bosses. So we're like, hey, we want to do this on our own. So this is one of those things that was really helpful, is having a plain, simple backdrop is way easier to take photos with than something that's super busy, super distracting. So even if you are taking pictures on site, on location, go out of your way to find a plain, simple, clean, clear, crisp backdrop, and you will love the result more than if there's a lot going on and it's really distracting and it's really busy. Number 4, and honestly, this one took me a long time to learn, so I will be the first to tell you, I want you to care about what you look like, and I want you to think about what you're wearing. And I think back now to like the early days of my business and how much I really hated getting my picture taken. And there was a lot for me to unpack in that scenario, but one of the reasons was that I didn't really take care of myself. I didn't really care what I looked like, and it wasn't wasn't this intentional, cohesive, on-brand wardrobe. But this idea of creating your vision board, creating your brand board, and then having your go-to wardrobe, I love the idea of thinking about when you're creating content, when you're going out there to capture pictures, when you know you're gonna be in the photo, you can have a uniform. You can just wear the same thing every single time. You can have your signature colors, you can have your signature style pieces. Nobody cares if you're wearing the same jacket in every video. Nobody's gonna notice if you're wearing the same sweater, the same shirt. Quite literally, we wear the same apron all the time, so you can keep wearing the same clothes in every photo that you take as well. And I will say, I actually didn't make this one up myself. When I was looking at some of my favorite florists, I realized how cohesive and like how trendy their Instagram feeds looked. And all of a sudden, I finally put two and two together and I realized they wear the same thing again and again and again. And it's very considered and it's very cohesive. But if you imagine like you looking at your own Instagram feed and just hypothetically, if you're always wearing the same, white shirt and blue apron, then of course everything's gonna look so much more cohesive and so much more in alignment with each other than if you're going from like yellow polka dots to blue stripes to a black shirt. Now I'll also say, I know it's completely unrealistic for us to be flowering in a white shirt, but you can totally take your white shirt with you, change into it anytime you want to. Feeling good about yourself, feeling good about what you're wearing is going to radiate so much positivity in your images, and you're going to become even more magnetic for your clients. So I want to give you permission to care about your wardrobe, and it's totally fine if you find one outfit that makes you feel good and then you just wear it again and again and again. Which leads me to number 5. Do your hair and makeup. Doesn't have to be fancy, doesn't have to be zhuzhy. Even if you're out in the flower farm, I want you to feel good about how you look. You will be so much more confident when you're taking pictures. You'll feel so much more poise and so much more courage to be in the photograph, to have your picture taken if you feel good and you've done your hair and makeup. And I don't mean you have to get like a professional blowout or do anything fancy. I'm just talking like you feel good about how you look. And I always regret, always regret taking the time to capture content, taking the time to take photos if I haven't done my hair and I haven't done my makeup. And that's just purely me, and it might be vain, and that's totally fine, but I feel better because of it. I don't do it for anybody else except me. If I feel good about it, I'm going to show up on camera with more confidence, and the result is always going to speak for itself. And I spent a long time telling myself that I shouldn't care until I decided to care. I will tell you, just care. Care about what you look like, care about how you feel, care about how you present yourself. And you don't have to do it for anybody else but yourself. Okay, with those 5 things behind us, I want to switch to number 6. And this is the one that all the photographers will spend hours and days and years talking about, and that is lighting. The science of photography is essentially the science of capturing the light. And there is so much detail and nuance, and you could dive into lighting and different lighting setups, and you could spend years. I mean, photographers literally study lighting for a living. So there's so much that we could talk about when it comes to lighting. But 3 things I just want you to keep in mind. In an ideal scenario, you would have your setup in indirect but natural light. So no overhead light, no fluorescent light, no LED light. It would purely be the natural light from the sun, and you would be in full shade. So in most instances, the ideal scenario is being close to a window or close to a door. However, I'm also very realistic and going, that's not how the flowers like to be. So in many cases, you might have a shop, you might have a studio where that isn't necessarily accessible. So the 2 other things that I will also link in the video description below, if you do have enough space and a good amount of space to create a content corner, these are my go-to light boxes. They are amazing. They cast such an even, consistent light. They are the ones that I go to as often as I can. The biggest downside with these light boxes though is that their footprint is quite significant. I'll also say you have to plug them into the wall, so if you are using them in an area where you might have buckets of water that spill, it just screams potential danger. So keep that in mind. electricity, water, humans, flower studio, don't mix all of those things up. If you need something that's a bit more mobile friendly, I've recently discovered this light attachment that you can attach to your phone, and it will actually help light the specific area that you're photographing. So this could be something that you throw into your toolbox. This can also just be something that you keep in your studio and you use it as you need it. But it's one of those really helpful space-saving shortcuts that I have just really fallen in love with recently. So it is another great solution if you don't want to invest in the light boxes, or you don't have room for the light boxes, or you just don't really want to risk the plugged into the wall water scenario. Number 7 is thinking through and playing with your composition. So no doubt you've probably heard the rule of thirds, where you're going to take your overall photo and you're going to divide it into 9 different quadrants, where you can, in an ideal scenario, you want to put the focal area of that photo at one of the intersections of that quadrant. So this is something that you can totally dig more into and that you can experiment with, and truly you can learn to take photos using any object and just practicing that with the rule of thirds. But 2 other things that have been really helpful specific to floral photography and building your portfolio. But when you're taking a photo of yourself, push the flowers toward the lens. That whole idea that taking a still photograph requires only 2 dimensions and it removes that 3rd dimension, you can actually use that to your advantage. So when you take a photo, experiment with pushing your flower bouquet or pushing the arrangement towards the actual lens. And you'll see that there can be quite a bit of distance between your flower bouquet and your actual body. But that actually creates such an abundant look in your designs and is just such a helpful thing to kind of play around with and experiment with, and you might just love the look of it. And then the 3rd one, and this is purely like Instagram influencer vibes, play with your body and the angles of your legs and your hips and your shoulders and your head and your neck and everything. And truly, I mean, experiment with this. Like, do some really weird things with your neck angle and push your chin out and pull your shoulders back and put your legs at all sorts of angles, because then you'll start to see how you and your human body show up in these photos, and you'll really start to appreciate. And truly, like, this is what the influencers do. They just have their go-to poses. Like, they just know exactly what they need to do because they have stood in front of the mirror and they've practiced it and they've taken hundreds of photos of themselves, and then you can delete them all and you get to do exactly the same thing. So playing with the angle of your shoulders, your hips, your leg, your feet, your neck, your chin, all of it, just have fun with it and allow it to be really weird. Number 8, post-production, which is just a fancy way of talking about how to edit your photos. So in the world of professional photography, almost every famous photographer on the planet has a set of presets. So this is exactly like the old school world of Instagram filters, where you can adjust the lighting, adjust the shadows, adjust the highlights, color correct things, but they have all these presets where you can just download them to your phone, and you just hit with one click of a button, it will automatically adjust the lighting and it will look so much better. A photographer friend of mine once told me that in her mind, 50% of the photography experience is actually done in editing. There is the whole composition, and then there's the actual capturing the image, but then 50% of her job is really thinking through and giving consideration to the editing process. Until she told me that, I didn't realize, because I literally thought everybody else was just taking pictures in their phone, and it was like everything just looked magical automatically. And I was like, oh, like there's a whole other layer to this process. So go out there and find photo editing presets that help you create the look that you're after. I will, in the description box below, link my favorite preset, but there are tons out there that you can experiment with. And just know that this is one of those things that's really worth kind of doing your homework on. It is absolutely worth, like, what you pay is what you get, and it can have such a dramatic impact on how much you love your photos simply by being smart with what presets you pick. Number 9, have a dedicated corner for taking photos, particularly if you are limited in space. This is one of those epic, amazing, time-saving shortcuts. Even if it's only like 1 meter by 1 meter, if it's a tiny little corner area that you keep clean, you keep organized, it is always ready for you to take a photo. This will make taking photos so much faster. If you know exactly where you're going to set up, how you're going to stand, what table you're going to use, whether you want to have linen, which tablecloth you're going to use, are you going to decorate the whole table, or is it just going to be you standing there with the bouquet, whatever that is, having that dedicated space, even if it's not very big, just makes the whole process so much better. Plus, in addition to that, things got really good point, once I realized when I'm putting my wedding production schedules together, before we get into the final wrap and pack, we actually would allocate 30 to 60 minutes for capturing photos. It was very considered, it was very planned. We knew we needed to plan our wardrobe, but we knew exactly where we were gonna stand, where we were gonna be, and one of us would take a picture, the other person would be in the photo, we'd play around, we've had a little bit of fun with it, and then we'd just finish wrapping, packing, presenting, and getting everything together before we'd go out and do the wedding delivery. And that one shift in our production schedule was super helpful, but it all started by having a dedicated itty bitty tiny little corner. I mean, if you have tons of space, then this could be spectacularly amazing. You could make it a grand walk-in photo studio space for yourself. But if you don't have much space, it doesn't have to be very big, but just get yourself set up so that the process of capturing content is so much easier. Then it will be so much easier for you to capture content, and then you'll do it more consistently, and you see where that whole thing's going. Number 10, take a video. I know, you're here because you're like, Kathleen, I want to learn how to take photos and I want to build my portfolio. Well, when it's getting so frustrating and you're like, oh, why are the pictures not turning out the way that I want them to? Remember, you can always take a 15, 20-second video. That is still going to be super helpful because you can still use that on your website. You can still use that for your Instagram content and your TikTok content. Like literally, it is still just as helpful. So if you're at that point of extreme frustration and you're like, I kind of want to throw my flowers across the room, remember, you can just take a video and then you can repurpose that same content again and again and again. And the beautiful thing about taking a video is that you get to have a bit more of that experience of being able to capture some of that third dimension, because you can move the camera out, you can move the camera in, you can push the flowers towards the lens, you can pull the flowers away from the lens, like you can create a little bit more movement and motion, and all of that can come across in your video. Number 11, practice. Now, if you're anything like me, you want to just kind of wake up one day and be really good at these things, but that's not how it happens. I was doing a little bit Googling the other day as I was thinking through like those truly world famous photographers like Annie Leibovitz. I was like, when did she first start as a photographer? She was 20. It's like, oh, right. So we only just have to be at this for like multiple decades before we get really good. But I don't say that as a way to like feel disheartened. I say that so that we can put it all in perspective. A, that is her craft. That is her hobby. She has dedicated hours, thousands and thousands of hours mastering her craft. So we can have a little bit more compassion and a little bit more patience with ourselves and go, you know what? We have a full business to run. We're also mastering the art of floral design and flower care and customer service and marketing. If you want to add photography to that skill set, it is so worth it, but just be patient. Having said that, practice. Even if, like, I literally started on this journey of figuring out how to take better photos of my own work and how to take pictures of myself with this photo. I literally had a plain neutral backdrop and I was like, I'm really gonna start to like test out some of my skills here. So I took a photo and I went, because I wanted to start to experiment. Okay, I've got a like more neutral backdrop. I'm literally just gonna take a photo of this one flower. I'm gonna go through the editing process because I just want to start to understand the process and the method behind this madness. So you can break it down into individual steps, but the most important thing is that you go out and practice. Because even Annie Leibovitz didn't just come out of the womb knowing how to use her camera, knowing how to connect with people and take amazing pictures. And then number 12, keep going. I do believe as a creative, it is so worth experimenting with photography and capturing videos. I think it's an amazing way for us to be able to capture our work because it is such a small moment in time that these arrangements and even these flowers will actually stay alive and be part of our own experience. More often than not, our customers get to enjoy them more than we do. So I love this idea of knowing that we get to take photos and we get to capture video content of it as a way for us to stay connected to the work that we've created. It is an amazing skill to keep up your sleeve and to really start to build on, because we can't always rely on professional photographers. It took me a long time to realize and to really kind of connect the dots in terms of my own disappointment in getting some of the photos back from the photographers at the weddings and events that we were doing, and recognizing, right, wait a minute, like their job isn't to build my portfolio. And in hindsight, I was like, well, duh. But realistically, that's how our industry kind of teaches us to build our portfolio, is like, go out there and do a bunch of weddings, wait for the photographer to send you the photos, and then that's how you're gonna market your next weddings. But if you're anything like me and you're like, A, I don't wanna wait that long, but B, in today's day and age of like being able to create content and use content on our website and on social media, I think being able to build this skill set of taking better photos of our own work for ourselves is such a valuable skill to learn. And it definitely doesn't replace the role of a professional photographer, because I will be the first to say, go out there and regularly invest in brand photography. Go out there and partner with the photographers that you love so that you can co-create something that is truly magical together. Go out there and commission your favorite photographers to take beautiful pictures of your work. But I don't think it's fair to rely on a wedding photographer to do the job of us building our portfolio. I think it's amazing for us to be able to put ourselves in the driver's seat of our marketing and our content, and us really learning how to showcase our portfolio in a way that we want to, and that relies on us being able to learn how to take better photos of our work. But I swear, if I can figure out how to do this, if I can figure out how to go through these steps, then I know you can too. But just like learning floral design and just like learning how to run a business, this isn't something that we just magically come out of the womb and we know how to do, or you put in an hour here and everything gets sorted out. Like, it's exactly the opposite of that. So put in the time, put in the energy, keep Googling all the things that you want to learn. Go out there and take photography classes. Go out there and learn from your favorite photographers. Just go out there and start learning and absorbing and really paying attention to the kinds of photos that you love and the kinds of portfolio images that you want, and then get to work making it happen. And this is one of those things that will forever pay off in your business, because as your business grows and changes and evolves, you can then learn and teach other people these skills too, which is just so much fun, because everybody being able to go out there and capture their work is just such an incredible skill to master. So I hope that this has been helpful. Please go out there, take these 12 principles, apply them to your business, share them with all of your flower friends. And if this is your very first video of mine, I'm so grateful that you are here and that you have found this amazing corner of the internet. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. And if anything in this video has been helpful for you, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And as always, I am so glad that you're here. Have the most amazing week, and I will talk to you again next week. Bye for now.